A writing system is an organized, regular method of information storage and transfer for the communication of messages in a language by visually encoding and decoding with a set of signs or symbols, both known generally as characters. These characters, often including letters and numbers, are usually recorded onto a durable medium such as paper or electronic storage display, although non-durable methods may also be used, such as writing in sand or skywriting. The general attributes of writing systems can be placed into broad categories such as alphabets, syllabaries, or logographies. Any particular system can have attributes of more than one category. In the alphabetic category, there is a standard set of letters of consonants and vowels that encode based on the general principle that the letters represent phonemes of the spoken language. A syllabary typically correlates a symbol to a syllable. In a logography, each character represents a word, morpheme or semantic unit. Other categories include abjads and abugidas, also called alphasyllabaries. A system's category can often be determined just by identifying the number of symbols used within the system. Alphabets typically use a set of 20 to 35 symbols to fully express a language, whereas syllabaries can have 80 to 100, and logographies can have several hundreds of symbols. Most systems will typically have an ordering of its symbol elements so that groups of them can be coded into larger clusters like words or acronyms, giving rise to many more possibilities and meanings than the symbols can convey by themselves. Systems will also enable the concatenation of these smaller groupings in order to enable a full expression of the language. The reading step can be accomplished by the reader purely in the mind as an internal process, or expressed verbally. Historically, writing systems have developed after a spoken language has been established, although the individual symbols used may have preceded the spoken word. A special set of symbols known as punctuation is used to aid in structure and organization of many writing systems and can be used to help capture nuances and variations in the message's meaning that are communicated verbally by cues in timing, tone, accent, inflection or intonation. A writing system will also typically have a method for formatting recorded messages that follows the spoken version's rules like its grammar and syntax so that the reader will have the meaning of the intended message accurately preserved. Writing systems were preceded by proto-writing, which used pictograms, ideograms and other mnemonic symbols. Proto-writing lacked the ability to capture and express a full range of thoughts and ideas. The invention of writing systems, which dates back to the beginning of the Bronze Age in the late Neolithic era of the late 4th millennium BCE, enabled the accurate durable recording of human history in a manner that was not prone to the same types of error to which oral history is vulnerable. Soon after, it provided a reliable form of long-distance communication. And with the advent of publishing, it provided the medium for an early form of mass communication. Secure written communications were also made more reliable with the invention of encryption. General properties. Writing systems are distinguished from other possible symbolic communication systems in that a writing system is always associated with at least a spoken language. In contrast, visual representations such as drawings, paintings, and nonverbal items on maps, such as contour lines, are not language-related. Some symbols on information signs, such as the symbols for male and female, are also not language-related, but can grow to become part of language if they are often used in conjunction with other language elements. Some other symbols, such as numerals and the ampersand, are not directly linked to any specific language, but are often used in writing and thus must be considered part of writing systems. Every human community possesses language, which many regard as an innate and defining condition of mankind. However, the development of writing systems, and the process by which they have supplanted traditional oral systems of communication, have been sporadic, uneven and slow. Once established, writing systems generally change more slowly than their spoken counterparts. Thus they often preserve features and expressions which are no longer current in the spoken language. One of the great benefits of writing systems is that they can preserve a permanent record of information expressed in a language. All writing systems require, at least one set of defined base elements or symbols, individually termed characters and collectively called a script. At least one set of rules and conventions understood and shared by a community, which assigns meaning to the base elements, their ordering and relations to one another. At least one language whose constructions are represented and can be recalled by the interpretation of these elements and rules. Some physical means of distinctly representing the symbols by application to a permanent or semi-permanent medium, so they may be interpreted. Basic terminology. In the examination of individual scripts, the study of writing systems has developed along partially independent lines. Thus, the terminology employed differs somewhat from field to field. The generic term text refers to an instance of written material. The act of composing and recording a text may be referred to as writing, and the act of viewing and interpreting the text as reading. Orthography refers to the method and rules of observed writing structure, and particularly for alphabetic systems, includes the concept of spelling. A grapheme is a specific base unit of a writing system. Graphemes are the minimally significant elements which taken together comprise the set of building blocks out of which texts made up of one or more writing systems may be constructed, along with rules of correspondence and use. The concept is similar to that of the phoneme used in the study of spoken languages. For example, in the Latin-based writing system of standard contemporary English, examples of graphemes include the majuscule and minuscule forms of the 26 letters of the alphabet, marks of punctuation, and a few other symbols such as those for numerals. An individual grapheme may be represented in a wide variety of ways, where each variation is visually distinct in some regard, but all are interpreted as representing the same grapheme. These individual variations are known as allographs of a grapheme. For example, the minuscule letter A has different allographs when written as a cursive, block, or typed letter. The choice of a particular allograph may be influenced by the medium used, the writing instrument, the stylistic choice of the writer, the preceding and following graphemes in the text, the time available for writing, the intended audience, and the largely unconscious features of an individual's handwriting. The terms glyph, sign and character are sometimes used to refer to a grapheme. Common usage varies from discipline to discipline. Compare cuneiform sign, Maya glyph, Chinese character. The glyphs of most writing systems are made up of lines and are therefore called linear, but there are glyphs in non-linear writing systems made up of other types of marks, such as cuneiform and braille. Writing systems are conceptual systems, as are the languages to which they refer. Writing systems may be regarded as complete according to the extent to which they are able to represent all that may be expressed in the spoken language. History. Writing systems were preceded by proto-writing, systems of ideographic and/or early mnemonic symbols. The best-known examples are, Zhou symbols, carved on tortoise shells in Zhou, circa 6600 BC, Vinaya signs, circa 5300 BC, early Indus script, circa 3500 BC. Nsibd script, circa before 500 AD. The invention of the first writing systems is roughly contemporary with the beginning of the Bronze Age in the late Neolithic of the late 4th millennium BC. The Sumerian archaic cuneiform script and the Egyptian hieroglyphs are generally considered the earliest writing systems, both emerging out of their ancestral proto-literate symbol systems from 3400 to 3200 BC with earliest coherent texts from about 2600 BC. It is generally agreed that Sumerian writing was an independent invention. However, it is debated whether Egyptian writing was developed completely independently of Sumerian, or was a case of cultural diffusion. A similar debate exists for the Chinese script, which developed around 1200 BC. The pre-Columbian Mesoamerican writing systems are generally believed to have had independent origins. It is thought that the first consonantal alphabetic writing appeared before 2000 BC, as a representation of language developed by Semitic tribes in the Sinai Peninsula. Most other alphabets in the world today either descended from this one innovation, many via the Phoenician alphabet, or were directly inspired by its design. The first true alphabet is the Greek script, which consistently represents vowels since 800 BC. The Latin alphabet, a direct descendant, is by far the most common writing system in use. Functional classification. Several approaches have been taken to classify writing systems, The most common and basic one is a broad division into three categories: logographic, syllabic, and alphabetic. However, all three may be found in any given writing system in varying proportions, often making it difficult to categorize a system uniquely. The term complex system is sometimes used to describe those where the admixture makes classification problematic. Modern linguists regard such approaches, including diacritics, pictographic script, ideographic script, analytic transitional script, phonetic script, alphabetic script, as too simplistic, often considering the categories to be incomparable. He'll split writing into three major categories of linguistic analysis, one of which covers discourses and is not usually considered writing proper: discourse system, iconic discourse system, for example Amerindian, conventional discourse system, for example Quipu. Morphemic writing system, for example Egyptian, Sumerian, Maya, Chinese, phonemic writing system, partial phonemic writing system, for example Egyptian, Hebrew, Arabic, polyphonemic writing system, for example Linear B, Kana, Cherokee, monophonemic writing system, phonemic writing system, for example Ancient Greek, Old English, morphophonemic writing system, for example German, Modern English. De Francis, criticizing Sampson's introduction of semasiographic writing and featural alphabets, stresses the phonographic quality of writing proper, pictures, non-writing, writing, rebus, syllabic systems, pure syllabic, for example Linear B, Yi, Kana, Cherokee, morphosyllabic, for example Sumerian, Chinese, Mayan, consonantal, morphoconsonantal, for example Egyptian, pure consonantal, for example Phoenician, alphabetic, pure phonemic, for example Greek, morphophonemic, for example English. Faber categorizes phonographic writing by two levels: linearity and coding, logographic, for example Chinese, ancient Egyptian, phonographic, syllabically linear, syllabically coded, for example Kana, Akkadian, segmentally coded, for example Hebrew, Syriac, Arabic, Ethiopian, Amharic, Devanagari. Segmentally linear, complete, for example Greco-Latin, Cyrillic, defective, for example Ugaritic, Phoenician, Aramaic, Old South Arabian, Old Hebrew. Logographic writing systems. A logogram is a single written character which represents a complete grammatical word. Most Chinese characters are classified as logograms. As each character represents a single word, many logograms are required to write all the words of language. The vast array of logograms and the memorization of what they mean are the major disadvantage of the logographic systems over alphabetic systems. However, since the meaning is inherent to the symbol, the same logographic system can theoretically be used to represent different languages. In practice, this is only true for closely related languages, like the Chinese languages, as syntactical constraints reduce the portability of a given logographic system. Japanese uses Chinese logograms extensively in its writing systems, with most of the symbols carrying the same or similar meanings. However, the semantics, and especially the grammar, are different enough that a long Chinese text is not readily understandable to a Japanese reader without any knowledge of basic Chinese grammar, though short and concise phrases such as those on signs and newspaper headlines are much easier to comprehend. While most languages do not use wholly logographic writing systems, many languages use some logograms. A good example of modern Western logograms are the Hindu Arabic numerals €. Everyone who uses those symbols understands what one means whether he or she calls it one, ains, yi, iki, ihad, ina, or jadan. Other Western logograms include the ampersand and, used for and, the @ sign at, used in many contexts for at, the percent sign percent, and the many signs representing units of currency. Logograms are sometimes called ideograms, a word that refers to symbols which graphically represent abstract ideas, but linguists avoid this use, as Chinese characters are often semantically Euro-phonetic compounds, symbols which include an element that represents the meaning and a phonetic complement element that represents the pronunciation. Some non-linguists distinguish between lexicography and ideography. where symbols in lexicographies represent words and symbols in ideographies represent words or morphemes. The most important modern logographic writing system is the Chinese one, whose characters are or were used, with varying degrees of modification, in Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, and other East Asian languages. Ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs and the Mayan writing system are also systems with certain logographic features, although they have marked phonetic features as well and are no longer in current use. Syllabic writing systems. As logographic writing systems use a single symbol for an entire word, a syllabary is a set of written symbols that represent syllables, which make up words. A symbol in a syllabary typically represents a consonant sound followed by a vowel sound, or just a vowel alone. In a true syllabary, there is no systematic graphic similarity between phonetically related characters. That is, the characters for, and have no similarity to indicate their common K sound. More recent creations such as the Cree syllabary embody a system of varying signs, which can best be seen when arranging the syllabogram set in an on-SATA coder or on-SATA rhyme table. Another type of writing system with systematic syllabic linear symbols, the abugidas, is discussed below. Syllabaries are best suited to languages with relatively simple syllable structure, such as Japanese. The English language, on the other hand, allows complex syllable structures, with a relatively large inventory of vowels and complex consonant clusters, making it cumbersome to write English words with a syllabary. To write English using a syllabary, every possible syllable in English would have to have a separate symbol, and whereas the number of possible syllables in Japanese is around 100, in English there are many thousands. However, syllabaries with much larger inventories do exist. The Yi script, for example, contains 756 different symbols. The Chinese script, when used to write Middle Chinese and the modern Chinese languages, also represents syllables, and includes separate glyphs for nearly all of the many thousand syllables in Middle Chinese. However, because it primarily represents morphemes, and includes different characters to represent homophonous morphemes with different meanings, it is normally considered a logographic script rather than a syllabary. Other languages that use true syllabaries include Mycenaean Greek and Native American languages such as Cherokee. Several languages of the ancient Near East used forms of cuneiform, which is a syllabary with some non-syllabic elements. Segmental writing systems, alphabets. An alphabet is a small set of letters basic written symbols each of which roughly represents or represented historically a phoneme of a spoken language. The word alphabet is derived from alpha and beta, the first two symbols of the Greek alphabet. Consonantal writing systems, abjads. The first type of alphabet that was developed was the abjad. An abjad is an alphabetic writing system where there is one symbol per consonant. Abjads differ from other alphabets in that they have characters only for consonantal sounds. Vowels are not usually marked in abjads. All known abjads belong to the Semitic family of scripts, and derive from the original Northern Linear abjad. The reason for this is that Semitic languages and the related Berber languages have a morphemic structure which makes the denotation of vowels redundant in most cases. Some abjads, like Arabic and Hebrew, have markings for vowels as well. However, they use them only in special contexts, such as for teaching. Many scripts derived from abjads have been extended with vowel symbols to become full alphabets. Of these, the most famous example is the derivation of the Greek alphabet from the Phoenician abjad. This has mostly happened when the script was adapted to a non-Semitic language. The term abjad takes its name from the old order of the Arabic alphabet's consonants alif, ba, ja m, dal, though the word may have earlier roots in Phoenician or Ugaritic. Abjad is still the word for alphabet in Arabic, Malay and Indonesian. Inherent vowel writing systems, abugidas. An abugida is an alphabetic writing system whose basic signs denote consonants with an inherent vowel and where consistent modifications of the basic sign indicate other following vowels than the inherent one. Thus, in an abugida there may or may not be a sign for K with no vowel, but also one for Ka, and K is written by modifying the ka sign in a way that is consistent with how one would modify la to get la. In many abugidas the modification is the addition of a vowel sign, but other possibilities are imaginable, such as rotation of the basic sign, addition of diacritical marks and so on. The contrast with true syllabaries is that the latter have one distinct symbol per possible syllable, and the signs for each syllable have no systematic graphic similarity. The graphic similarity of most abugidas comes from the fact that they are derived from abjads, and the consonants make up the symbols with the inherent vowel and the new vowel symbols are markings added onto the base symbol. In the Ge'ez script, for which the linguistic term abugida was named, the vowel modifications do not always appear systematic, although they originally were more so. Canadian Aboriginal syllabics can be considered abugidas, although they are rarely thought of in those terms. The largest single group of abugidas is the Brahmic family of scripts, however, which includes nearly all the scripts used in India and Southeast Asia. The name abugida is derived from the first 4 characters of an order of the Ge'ez script used in some contexts. It was borrowed from Ethiopian languages as a linguistic term by Peter T. Daniels. Featural writing systems. A featural script represents finer detail than an alphabet. Here symbols do not represent whole phonemes, but rather the elements that make up the phonemes, such as voicing or its place of articulation. Theoretically, each feature could be written with a separate letter. And abjads or abugidas, or indeed syllabaries, could be featural, but the only prominent system of this sort is Korean Hangul. In Hangul, the featural symbols are combined into alphabetic letters, and these letters are in turn joined into syllabic blocks, so that the system combines 3 levels of phonological representation. Many scholars, for example John de Francis, reject this class or at least labeling Hangul as such. The Korean script is a conscious script creation by literate experts, which Daniels calls a sophisticated grammatogeny. These include stenographies and constructed scripts of hobbyists and fiction writers, many of which feature advanced graphic designs corresponding to phonologic properties. The basic unit of writing in these systems can map to anything from phonemes to words. It has been shown that even the Latin script has sub-character features. Ambiguous writing systems. Most writing systems are not purely one type. The English writing system, for example, includes numerals and other logograms such as $, and the phonemic letter clusters are a complex match to sound. As mentioned above, all logographic systems have phonetic components as well, whether along the lines of a syllabary, such as Chinese, or an abjad, as in Egyptian. Some scripts, however, are truly ambiguous. The semi-syllabaries of ancient Spain were syllabic for plosives such as p, t, k, but alphabetic for other consonants. In some versions, vowels were written redundantly after syllabic letters, conforming to an alphabetic orthography. Old Persian cuneiform was similar. Of 23 consonants, 7 were fully syllabic, 13 were purely alphabetic, and for the other 3, there was one letter for and another for both and. However, all vowels were written overtly regardless. As in the Brahmic abugidas, the letter was used for a bare consonant. The Tsuyin phonetic glossing script for Chinese divides syllables in 2 or 3, but into onset, medial, and rhyme rather than consonant and vowel. Pahawh Hmong is similar, but can be considered to divide syllables into either onset rhyme or consonant vowel. As the latter, it is equivalent to an abugida but with the roles of consonant and vowel reversed. Other scripts are intermediate between the categories of alphabet, abjad and abugida, so there may be disagreement on how they should be classified. Graphic classification. Perhaps the primary graphic distinction made in classifications is that of linearity. Linear writing systems are those in which the characters are composed of lines, such as the Latin alphabet and Chinese characters. Chinese characters are considered linear whether they are written with a ballpoint pen or a calligraphic brush, or cast in bronze. Similarly, Egyptian hieroglyphs and myoglyphs were often painted in linear outline form, but in formal contexts they were carved in bas-relief. The earliest examples of writing are linear. The Sumerian script of c. 3300 BC was linear, though its cuneiform descendants were not. Non-linear systems, on the other hand, such as Braille, are not composed of lines, no matter what instrument is used to write them. Cuneiform was probably the earliest non-linear writing. Its glyphs were formed by pressing the end of a reed stylus into moist clay, not by tracing lines in the clay with the stylus as had been done previously. The result was a radical transformation of the appearance of the script. Braille is a non-linear adaptation of the Latin alphabet that completely abandoned the Latin forms. The letters are composed of raised bumps on the writing substrate, which can be leather, stiff paper, plastic or metal. There are also transient non-linear adaptations of the Latin alphabet, including Morse Code, the manual alphabets of various sign languages, and semaphore, in which flags or bars are positioned at prescribed angles. However, if writing is defined as a potentially permanent means of recording information, then these systems do not qualify as writing at all, since the symbols disappear as soon as they are used. Directionality. Scripts are also graphically characterized by the direction in which they are written. Egyptian hieroglyphs were written either left to right or right to left, with the animal and human glyphs turned to face the beginning of the line. The early alphabet could be written in multiple directions, horizontally or vertically. It was commonly written boustrophodonically, starting in one direction, then turning at the end of the line and reversing direction. The Greek alphabet and its successors settled on a left-to-right pattern, from the top to the bottom of the page. Other scripts, such as Arabic and Hebrew, came to be written right to left. Scripts that incorporate Chinese characters have traditionally been written vertically, from the right to the left of the page, but nowadays are frequently written left to right, top to bottom, due to Western influence, a growing need to accommodate terms in the Latin script, and technical limitations in popular electronic document formats. The Old Uggar alphabet and its descendants are unique in being written top to bottom, left to right. This direction originated from an ancestral Semitic direction by rotating the page 90 a degree counterclockwise to conform to the appearance of vertical Chinese writing. Several scripts used in the Philippines and Indonesia, such as Hanuna Cubed O, are traditionally written with lines moving away from the writer, from bottom to top, but are read horizontally left to right. Writing systems on computers. In computers and telecommunication systems, writing systems are generally not codified as such, but graphemes and other grapheme-like units that are required for text processing are represented by characters that typically manifest in encoded form. There are many character encoding standards and related technologies, such as ISO IEC 8859-1, CJK and bidirectional text. Today, many such standards are redefined in a collective standard, the ISO IEC 10646 Universal Character Set, and a parallel, closely related expanded work, the Unicode standard. Both are generally encompassed by the term Unicode. In Unicode, each character, in every language's writing system, is given a unique identification number, known as its code point. Computer operating systems use code points to look up characters in the font file, so the characters can be displayed on the page or screen. A keyboard is the device most commonly used for writing via computer. Each key is associated with a standard code which the keyboard sends to the computer when it is pressed. By using a combination of alphabetic keys with modifier keys such as Ctrl, Alt, Shift and Alt-GR, various character codes are generated and sent to the CPU. The operating system intercepts and converts those signals to the appropriate characters based on the keyboard layout and input method, and then delivers those converted codes and characters to the running application software, which in turn looks up the appropriate glyph in the currently used font file, and requests the operating system to draw these on the screen. See also. Notes. References, Sis, Mamado 2006. The Crits A copyright Craiches en Afrique de l'Ouest. Sudlangs na degree 6, http, www.sudlangs.sn/spit.php. Article 101, Coolmers, Florian 1996. The Blackwell Encyclopedia of Writing Systems. Oxford, Blackwell. Daniels, Peter T., and William Bright, eds. 1996. The World's Writing Systems. Oxford University Press. ISBN 0-19-507993-0. De Francis, John 1990. The Chinese Language, Fact and Fantasy. Honolulu, University of Hawaii Press. ISBN 0-8248-1068-6, Harman, Harold, Geschichte der Schrift, Ma 1/4 NCHEN, C.H. Beck, ISBN A3-406-47998-7. Hannes, William. C. 1997. Asia's Orthographic Dilemma. University of Hawaii Press. ISBN 0-8248-1892-X. ISBN 0-8248-1842-3, Millard, A.R., The Infancy of the Alphabet, World Archaeology 17, 390 doi, 10.1080/0043824.1986.9979978. Nishiyama, Yutaka. 2010. The Mathematics of Direction in Writing. International Journal of Pure and Applied Mathematics, Volume 61, No. 3, 347-356. Rogers, Henry. 2005. Writing Systems, A Linguistic Approach. Oxford, Blackwell. ISBN 0-631-23463-2. ISBN 0-631-23464-0. Sampson, Geoffrey. 1985. Writing Systems. Stanford, California, Stanford University Press. ISBN 0-8047-1756-7, ISBN 0-8047-1254-9. Smalley, W.A. 1964. Orthography Studies, Articles on New Writing Systems. London, United Bible Society. External links, Writing Systems Research Free first issue of a journal devoted to research on writing systems, Arch Chinese character writing animations and native speaker pronunciations, Descartes Unicode Wiki with all 98,884 Unicode 5.0 characters as GIFs in 3 sizes, African Writing Systems, Omniglet, the online encyclopedia of writing systems and languages, Hungarian, Ultraeupu, Faroldal, Ancient Scripts Introduction to Different Writing Systems, Michael Everson's Alphabets of Europe, the Unicode Consortium, a Lions script, a writing system that combines the linearity of spelling with the free-form aspects of drawing. Russian, Written of the World,